Good evening. Welcome to the March 26, 2024 City Council meeting. The meeting is hereby called to order. Members of the public may attend the City Council meeting in person or may watch and listen remotely by viewing the meeting on Channel 8 WCTV and on the city's website at www.wayzata.org/WCTV. Public comment during the public forum and/or public hearing portions of the meeting may be provided in person in advance or by logging into the Zoom call and raising your hand during the public hearing. When your name is called in the meeting, you will be seen and heard in our council chambers and the cable channel. You will be asked to unmute, and then you may begin your comment. All public comments must include your full name and address. Second item on the agenda this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance. I would ask everyone to please stand and follow along if they are able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Third item on the agenda this evening is the roll call. Let the record reflect that all members of the council, except for Councilmember Parkhill, are present. Next up is to approve the agenda. Would someone care to make a motion to approve the agenda as is, or would anyone care to make any changes?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
To approve the agenda as is?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. Excuse me. Next item is the public forum. As a reminder for members of the public who are in attendance this evening and who are interested in speaking, we ask that you please state your name, address, indicate if you are representing a group, and we also ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. If the item you wish to speak about is something that is on the agenda, for those that are in person, we ask that you please fill out a form at the table in the back of the room and hand it to staff. For those that are watching via Zoom, please send a note via chat to staff and let them know what agenda item you wish to speak about. We also require that your camera is turned on when you speak. City Manager, has anybody submitted any forms for public comment, or is anybody on Zoom who would like to speak?
Madam Mayor, we do not have anyone on tonight.
Okay, very good. Seeing that there's nobody in the room who would like to speak during public forum, we'll go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, number 6. And that's new agenda items. Council, do any of you have any items you would like to bring up for a future meeting for our consideration? No? Okay, then moving right along, we'll move on to the consent agenda. On this evening's consent agenda, we have a few items. I'll go ahead and read through those. First is approval of the City Council workshop and regular meeting minutes of March 12, 2024. Approval of the check register, approval of municipal licenses, receipt of the police activity report, receipt of the building activity report, approval of professional services agreement between the City of Wayzata and BKV Group for City Hall security improvements, and approval of professional services agreement between City of Wayzata and BKV Group for facility need assessment for the Wayzata Police and Fire Departments. Council, do any of you have any questions for any of the items on our consent agenda or wish to pull one for further discussion?
I have a question, Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Iverson.
It's just regarding number E.
Yes, please go ahead.
So it looks like from January and February on the building permit side, where I have 29 permits to date. I'm just wondering, like from projection standpoint, are we up from last year or are we about the same?
Councilmember Iverson, Madam Mayor, I'll opine briefly and then I'll ask if Director Gellner has anything to add. January and February is usually our slowest months, so I wouldn't read too much into those numbers. And usually, years past, it's been very slow too. So it's really hard to say if we're on track, and usually our numbers are pretty conservative for budgeting purposes. But Director Gellner, anything to add there?
I can say that our inspection staff feels very busy right now. I can certainly guarantee that, but would have to look at more information to compare figures.
The reason I ask is on the number of building permits, the projected value was quite high. And so I'm just wondering if that would seem to be a little higher than last February.
Yeah, I do know that values have increased. The cost of labor and materials has increased and stayed at a higher rate.
Okay, thank you.
And oftentimes, Councilmember Iverson, Madam Mayor, one big house on the lake can distort that, and especially in a smaller community, you get one or two that can really alter the numbers significantly.
Okay, thank you.
All right, great, thank you. Seeing that there are no other questions on the consent agenda, would someone care to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make that motion, Madam Mayor, to approve the consent agenda as outlined.
Thank you, Councilmember McDonald. Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Which takes us on to new business, and our first item under new business is to consider adoption of Resolution 11-2024, approving conditional use permit for a medical clinic at 1905 Wayzata Boulevard East. City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Assistant Planner Val Quarles is going to walk us through this item.
Very good, thank you. Good evening, Ms. Quarles.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we're going to be talking about approval of a conditional use permit for a medical clinic at 1905 Wayzata Boulevard East. The owner is CWE LLC, and the applicant is Phil Ecker with Ecker Dermatology. The applicant's representative, who's here tonight, is Megan Rogers with Larkin Hoffman. The project is located on the east side of town, north of Highway 12, and is a parcel that has 3 office buildings on it today. As you can see, most of these office buildings look identical to one another, but just so you have a little bit of context for the ones that we're talking about. Both of those parcels there in blue, the larger one that the 3 office buildings are on, and then the skinny one next to it, are part of the same PUD. And then all of those parcels along Wayzata Boulevard there are guided mixed-use, commercial residential. When it comes to existing conditions, there's just under 100,000 square feet of total office space across all 3 of the buildings on that parcel. They're mostly office tenants. There are 2 medical tenants today. One is just under 1,000 square feet, and the other is about 3,000 square feet. In that 1905 building specifically, which is the one seeking an approval today, there's about 36,000 square feet of office space, and today it sits about 21% vacant. The entitlement strategy for this one back in 1997 is a little bit complicated, and it's the main reason we're here tonight talking about the medical clinic. The original 1997 PUD included both of those parcels, like I mentioned, and was entitled through Ordinance 591. The way that Ordinance 591 was set up was that it gave a list of allowed and conditional uses within the PUD and just copied that list from the C3 district as it sat in 1997. What this means is that even though we've updated C3 in the intervening years since the late 90s, that particular list of allowed and conditional uses has not changed in the interim. Since 1997, that PUD was amended in 2000 to allow for the construction of those 3 office buildings. It got a height variance specifically, and those buildings were constructed in 2001. The proposal in front of us is to, within the 1905 building, add about 3,500 square feet of medical tenant space within an existing space. And this does require a CUP under that original Ordinance 591 because medical uses are considered conditional under that original PUD. That's not the case for how we treat C3 today. Most of those are permitted, but as Ordinance 591 is set up, it's conditional. So when we look at that application, we look at the conditional use permit standards. Staff and both the Planning Commission and staff found that it appeared to be compatible with those present and future office uses on the property as a dermatology clinic, and that it would have a minimal impact on the area compared to the current condition. The only standard listed within Ordinance 591 that's any different from the CUP standards is just making sure that traffic wouldn't overwhelm the streets around the development, and staff's finding on that, which Planning Commission agreed with, was that the proposed 3,500 square foot medical clinic would not raise traffic beyond the capacity of the surrounding streets. Engineering also concurred with the rest of staff. We did our standard notification of the neighborhood ahead of the Planning Commission meeting. There's no neighborhood meeting required. When the Planning Commission discussed, they were presented with an existing report and recommendation of approval that staff had written. We considered it a fairly simple application that didn't require Planning Commission to, make their own sort of custom findings for us to bring forward to the next Planning Commission meeting and then to this meeting. So we brought forward a report and recommendation of approval. They reviewed it and approved it. So they agreed with our answer to, is the proposal consistent with the comp plan? Yes, it is. It furthers the goals of mixed-use commercial residential, both through promoting that diversity of land uses by adding medical and supporting the existing commercial core with those office buildings. Again, finding that it's compatible with present and future uses, and then finding that traffic, again, was not going to be a problem. And the Planning Commission voted 5-0 to adopt staff's report and recommendation of approval. So our proposed motion is to adopt Resolution 11-2024, approving a CUP for a medical clinic at 1905 Wayzata Boulevard East. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Quarles. Council, any questions of staff? No? My only question is really procedurally. So in terms of, you explained that according to the zoning, this would be allowed, is that correct? It would not require a CUP, but because the PUD requires a CUP, that's why we're here today?
Yes, and the only reason I brought up the C3 zoning is just because the way that they set that up was, the main reason they were looking for a PUD was to make it so they could have 3 office buildings on the site. They weren't doing a PUD to try to do anything special in terms of uses. The problem is just that the list of uses that they tied it to at the time has since become kind of dated. So the point being that we don't really have this problem throughout the rest of town because we've adapted, but this PUD has not in the meantime.
And in order, and maybe this is a question then to be directed to the city attorney, if any type of PUD amendment, would that have to come from the property owner as opposed to initiated by the city?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Okay. All right. Did the,
I'm
yes.
sorry to interrupt. Yeah, the city could initiate that. We would have the authority to do it, but I think in this case, there have been some conversations between staff and the property owner about making that change, so that might be forthcoming. This was the most expedited process to get this particular applicant approved and ready to go with the updates for the office.
Well, thank you. That's very helpful. I'm just thinking into the future, rather than an applicant spending time and money and staff and ultimately planning commission and council for something that appears relatively straightforward. I don't know how the property owner feels about it, but it seems a logical ask, certainly in keeping with our evolution in the city.
Yes, I'd agree so, and in conversations with the property owner and their representative, I believe an application will be forthcoming for a PUD amendment. I'm not sure what the scope of that PUD amendment would be, but it's certainly going to continue to be common to have medical-type uses that want to use an office building in Wayzata.
Very good. Well, thank you. All right, if there are no other questions from the council, I would certainly welcome any comments by the applicant if you're so inclined. Certainly don't have to if you would rather not.
Well, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time this evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. We are happy to be here tonight and to answer any questions that you have about this CUP, but we appreciate the quick and thorough review by staff.
Excuse me.
Yes.
If you would please introduce yourself with your
absolutely.
name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Megan Rogers, and I represent Dr. Phil Ecker and his new clinic, Ecker Dermatology. I am an attorney with Larkin Hoffman, and I think our address is 8300 Norman Center Drive in Bloomington, Minnesota.
Thank you very much.
And we also represent Continental Properties Group, which is the owner and operator of this complex. We will be bringing forward a PUD amendment for your consideration, updating the uses to be consistent with the C3 district so that you do not have this same occurrence happening again. And we also have a representative from the property owner here if you have any questions of us, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. All right, any questions of the applicant? No? Or the applicant's representative? No? All right, thank you very much. You may be seated. All right, seeing that there are no further questions, I'll bring it back to the council for their thoughts on the matter. Anybody like to begin? Councilmember McDonald?
Madam Mayor, yeah, I don't have a lot of to add to this or context other than to just say that I support this conditional use permit for the medical clinic that they're asking for.
Okay, very good. Anybody else? Councilmember
Madam
Pledge.
Mayor, this is very straightforward. The resolution is straightforward. The Planning Commission did its job, and they were detailed enough to satisfy my desire to, so I'm all for it.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Iverson.
I support the other council members' decision. I think the planning commission's support and recommendation for this approval was the right direction to go.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I too am in support of this application. This is very reasonable and definitely use for that location. It's been a wonderful location, great to its neighbors. I remember seeing some of the concerns that were raised. It's a tricky parcel because it's bordered, it's in Wayzata, but it's also bordered by Minnetonka, and with Minnetonka residents. And it was the moment, and it is the example that I share with every single person. It was long before I was ever on the council, of how applicants should be working with neighbors, and they're addressing their concerns. And when those neighbors came forward and said, you know, this developer came forward, and we shared our concerns, and they've addressed every single one, and they were great to work with, I thought, wow, wouldn't it be nice if everybody got along like this in these types of applications? So suffice it to say, I have held, you know, that application and that public hearing in the highest regard for maybe any public hearing I've witnessed in my time here. So both as a citizen, but as an elected official as well. So again, I find that this is not only has this been a great property owner, developer to start with, property owner, but you know, we have also evolved, and our commercial C3 district has evolved as well over time, and so this is a very reasonable and logical ask. So with that, I would ask for a motion to adopt Resolution 11-2024, approving a conditional use permit for a medical clinic at 1905 Wayzata Boulevard East.
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And a second.
Second?
Motion has been first and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. Thank you very much. All right, a quick technical question for staff. Is my mic going in and out? I feel like it is.
I think it's for us, I think it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
you're
kept
good.
feeling like I was cutting out somehow. I was getting worried. Thank you. I'm sure our technical advisor will let you know.
He's on it.
Okay, perfect. All right, we're still in new business, and our second item under new business is for us to consider adoption of Resolution 13-2024, appointing a Charter Commission member. City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Director Gellner, for pulling this up. Quick item tonight. As you all know, towards the end of the year is when we do our annual interviews and ultimate appointments to all the boards and commissions that we have for the organization. One of those commissions is the Charter Commission, and it consists of up to 15 members. And if you remember, we had a couple interviews. We appointed some great new community members to that commission. We still have some open, and thanks to the coaxing, the selling, the networking by some community members like Ms. Graciela Gonzalez, and then also staff with City Clerk Learvig, we got another interested applicant for the Charter Commission. We interviewed Mr. Sleeper tonight, and the recommendation from staff is that that the council would consider adopting the attached ordinance in the resolution in the agenda packet tonight with the appointment of Mr. Sleeper. Ultimately, because it's the Charter Commission, that it's more of a recommendation, and that goes to our local district judge. The judge will call our appointment and hopefully confirm, and then we'll get the approval notice from the district court shortly thereafter. So that's how the process works, but staff's recommending adoption of the resolution of appointing Mr. Sleeper. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Wonderful. Thank you, City Manager. Questions of staff? No? Well, I would just like to say, Mr. Sleeper has incredibly impressive credentials. I don't have his resume in front of me, or his application, I should say, but a law professor at St. Cloud State. He represented St. Cloud Township
Yep, yep,
as an attorney.
correct, yeah.
Yeah, so constitutional law professor, expert, not a reader of the Federalist Papers, we found out.
He-
It's just a question that was asked by one of our council members during the interview. And not a typical question of one of our applicants.
And the charter is our constitution, so this is a perfect fit for him.
It is. No,
Just to be clear, that question had nothing to do with the application. It was just more of a curiosity.
absolutely. Oh, it was a great question, though, and certainly elicited conversation after the fact, so. Wonderful. No, always excited to have new members of the community that are interested in serving in whatever capacity, but certainly when it ties into their life's work. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Okay, so this will go to, assuming it passes, this will go to Hennepin County District Court Judge, who would then affirm or further
Exactly.
certify, or I don't know
Usually,
what
they
the.
call the applicant and then they, I think, ask him a few questions and then affirm.
Okay, perfect. The judge will sign on the dotted line.
Correct, yep.
Perfect, okay. So with that, would someone care to make a motion to adopt Resolution 13-2024, appointing Brad Sleeper
Yep.
to the Charter Commission for a 3-year term?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Iverson, and would somebody care to second that motion?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Sleeper. All right, and that takes us to our last item under new business, and that is to consider approval of a professional services agreement with Point 7 Group for Phase 1 Municipal Dispensary Business Plan and Financial Model. City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Director Gellner is going to walk us through this item. I do want to say that this item tonight, which you'll get all the details from Director Gellner, is really just kind of the first necessary action in order to get more information if the city is going to pursue its own municipal dispensary. So just preface that of where if this action tonight falls with kind of the greater context of this topic. But Director Gellner has been on top of this and has a lot of information to share and provide with you tonight.
Great. Good evening, Director Gellner.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. With the legalization of adult-use cannabis on August 1st, 2023, it became the 23rd state in the United States to legalize the product, and the law established a new state Office of Cannabis Management, called OCM for short, and legal sales are expected to begin of adult-use cannabis beginning around January of 2025. So since legalization, the city has taken a number of actions. The first is that we adopted a moratorium prohibiting the sale and distribution and manufacturing of adult-use cannabis until 2025. We also approved an ordinance that limits consumption of cannabis in our public areas. And then we also adopted our 2024 to 2026 strategic plan, and that includes exploration of a municipal dispensary. We have two goals related to this. First is to diversify revenue. The city is exploring an operation of a municipal dispensary to diversify revenues and add revenues, and that is a benefit to property taxpayers. And then secondly, the community is interested in sustaining its community character and safety, and so that is why the city is exploring the operation of a municipal dispensary to ensure that we protect the community's well-being and safety. We've had 3 workshops so far on this topic. In July, we talked about hemp-derived THC sales, which we'll talk about here on the next slide. In December, we started talking about an overall framework for studying the possibility of a municipal dispensary, and that document is included in your packets this evening. And then in March, we talked about a financial feasibility portion of the study. In June, we'd like to return to you under your direction to look at the results of the study of financial feasibility, and then in summer, start to work on zoning for cannabis businesses. Now, in 2022, there was a new state law adopted that requires the labeling and testing of federally legal hemp-derived THC products. And so in 2023, in response to that, we established a local registration process, and we began selling THC beverages that are hemp-derived at our Wayzata Wine and Spirits and at Wayzata Bar and Grill. There's an image of our sales. This is an image from the framework that is in your packets this evening. I know the text is a little small, but it is around page 120 in your packets. In Q4 of 2023, we were sure to meet with other interested municipalities that we know through the League of Minnesota Cities and gather information. We decided to convene a working group of municipalities that are interested in their own dispensary, and we have 47 members of that working group right now. And we've only had 2 meetings so far. Our third one is later this week, and with each meeting, we've had more interested cities come forward. The range of 47 cities within that work group ranges from cities that are smaller than Wayzata in outstate Minnesota and as large suburbs within the Twin Cities. So we're just using that as a way to share information with one another. We've also met with potential consultants that could conduct a feasibility analysis. And at our last workshop, we brought forward some proposals for your review. The next step in tonight's action is to execute a contract and then begin that analysis. Now, the rest of Q1 2024, we would continue to meet with other interested municipalities, continue sharing information, and of course, monitoring the Office of Cannabis Management's rulemaking process, which lays out licensing requirements that would be specific to a municipal dispensary retail store. So in Q2 of 2024, if we stay on the timeline that we have proposed, we would review the results with the City Council of a financial feasibility assessment, and we would start to draft a timeline and work plan for establishing a community-driven process and guiding principles that would help us with several decisions that would need to be made before now and the time of application. So what we've laid out is that there's really a first crucial City Council decision point in June of 2024, at which the Council can decide whether to continue studying feasibility or to decide that it is time to stop studying feasibility and move on to other priorities within our strategic plan. So just to recap that at our December 5th workshop summary, the adult use is considered the high potency cannabis products. Those must be sold separately from liquor. So right now we're commingling products, and that won't be possible under the new law with the high potency products. Currently, we're selling low potency products that can be sold with liquor. That's an important distinction that I want to make sure that people understand. I know we have discussed that before. And then also, I just want to make sure that it's well understood that the legislation allows for a municipal retail store, but exclusive rights to municipalities is not in the law. We see this in liquor law, but it is not the same in the cannabis law. A community may pass a local ordinance that limits retail licenses to 1 retail license per 12,500 people. This could be an option for Wayzata that we could pursue. If we adopted that ordinance locally before the end of 2024, then the city would need to compete for that first and only license within city limits. I want to just share a little bit about what was the feedback that we received at our December 5th workshop, because that's when we were talking about the overall study framework, not just financial feasibility. We heard interest from the council in the potential revenues that were possible, and noting the long history of successful muni operations within our community. It was noted that this is unique timing to enter an emerging market and that demand likely will be strong. But there were concerns that competition in nearby cities could stifle success here, and that this could possibly be executed best by a private operator rather than public, and that a high-level investment is necessary in a dispensary for the build-out and the staff and the inventory. Ultimately, we had a long, good discussion about several concerns and several opportunities, and the overall direction was to obtain consultant proposals for review, that consultants that can help us determine potential revenue opportunities as a really first step in the process. And so we have reviewed 2 proposals, And this, we found Point Seven Group, they're based out of Denver. We found them through another convening of municipalities that were learning more about cannabis operations and zoning options. And they actually seemed like a really good fit, great communicators. And they developed a proposal that's in your packets this evening. It's for up to 80 hours of consulting time over the next 60 days. And they will develop a retail business plan with a financial model and a 5-year pro forma. Also, a go-to-market project plan, which is just helping staff understand all the steps that need to happen to make an application. Not that we would do all those steps, just they'd be pointing out what those are so we understand what the workload could possibly be through the end of the year. And that can help us understand the costs. And then we'll also be analyzing dispensary location requirements in general, looking at some general floor and site plan options, and looking at some average build-out costs that can be built into the business plan and financial model. They're also going to do a team evaluation to see the capacity of our staff today, what our potential organizational chart could be, and then a personnel plan as well as personnel expenses. And that is all laid out. It's around 120 or so page in your agendas packets. There's another more detailed list of what's in the business plan and what's in the financial model and pro forma as well. So I just want to recap too what we heard on March 12th at the workshop after, there was a review of this proposal. The council wanted to make sure that it was noted that they are recognizing that there's significant work that's necessary in a short amount of time to be the first applicant that's awarded a retail license in Wayzata, and that a financial feasibility study should really help clarify, the size and scale of a potential retail establishment within our community. And the council directed us to prepare an agreement with Point Seven Group for review and to work toward a June presentation on the study results. And there was also noted by council that the results of this study also inform zoning decisions that we will need to be making before the end of 2024. Through the results of this, we'll understand what a general retail facility looks like, what the general behaviors of them are, and so it'll be easier for us to understand what the zoning implications could be. So the budget considerations here this evening are that this contract is for a value of $15,000 plus travel expenses. The travel included is expected to be one trip here from Denver to present the results to you in June. Unless there's any additional travel expenses, that's the only one that I'm currently planning. And then this would also be funded by a portion of our $100,000 allocated in our facilities CIP for a feasibility study and business planning for cannabis in 2024. So there's a number of next steps that would take place if this approval of this contract is approved tonight. So first is to execute the contract and begin the 60-day analysis and prepare for that June workshop, which is a crucial decision point. So a lot of information will need to be gathered for that time. The next is to continue meeting with the 47 or more other interested municipalities to understand their interest and share information with one another. Monitoring the Office of Cannabis Management rulemaking process, and then exploring whether the city could hire a private operator through a competitive selection process and work in partnership with a private operator. We'd like to continue understanding the pros and cons of that type of approach. We'd also like to prepare potentially community engagement options, such as a task force that could be focused on public safety, fiscal responsibility, and the muni legacy if the council decides to move forward with pursuing a municipal dispensary. So first, we want to just understand what the financial possibilities are before we start engaging in a community engagement process. And then we'd like to begin working on the zoning ordinance updates regardless, and we'd plan to start that in the summer and host a community meeting about that as well in the summer. And I'll just say that the legislative session is, of course, underway, and there are several headlines about what possibly could change during this session. I would just recommend that we wait until the end of session to understand what those implications are. But Point Seven Group has offered to keep us informed of what's happening at the Capitol, so we have a general idea. But really, we'll focus on what's ultimately approved at the end of session, and we'll work with it, whatever it may be. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the mayor and council for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gellner. Council, questions of staff? Yep. Councilmember Pleckovich.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of questions before we get to discussion here. I'm going to read out of our notes here. It says that the staff is working under the assumption that the license application will require the exclusive sale of adult use cannabis within a separate retail store in order to obtain a license. So if you could maybe expound on that a little bit and tell me how you envision that. Would it be a small footprint retail store that would sell only cannabis products? Or would it be a store that sells that principally with other things?
Yes, Mayor and Council, I think what we typically are seeing around the country is that the municipal dispensary would sell only cannabis within that facility. And that's likely what the license application is going to require. The footprint, the average footprint of a retail store can be as small as 1,500 square feet or much larger, over 4,000 square feet. Generally, the average is 2,000 to 4,000 square feet.
Okay. And the other question I had was with regard to that legislative limit of 1 per 12,500. We live in a community with a population of roughly 4,500. So I'd like to get a better sense of what that means to us. Is it possible that communities that surround us would provide for retail establishments that would then encompass Wayzata, so we wouldn't even have to deal with this?
That's a good question. Mayor and Council, I think I'll turn to City Attorney for any additional context around that. I think that we would possibly see competition from other cities, especially in our neighboring commercial areas. As far as how that question would particularly work, I would need more expertise on that.
Yeah, council member and Madam Mayor, my understanding of the legislation as it's currently written is that that is a countywide limit. So there has to be one license available per 12,500 people in the county. And as we discussed in our workshop, one of the tough parts of trying to parse out that is we don't know, until we have data on how many licenses there are in the county, we have to prepare for the fact that we cannot just prohibit it. We need to make at least one available here in Wayzata. So that's the current track staff is on.
Okay. That's all I had.
Thank you, Councilmember Plekish. Councilmember McDonald, and then no questions. Okay, very good.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Gellner, do you know if .7 is working with any of the other 47 municipalities in your working group?
I'm not aware of any contractual relationships with any other cities, but I do have them presenting information about doing a financial assessment at our next meeting. So I imagine that they'll be meeting more people through this. There are not as many Minnesota companies yet that are doing this work. There are a few law firms, there are a few accounting firms based in Minnesota that do this work. But I think we have to search nationally for some of these services at this point.
Okay. With that in mind, that answer in mind, how do you see .7 tailoring their report to us specifically? Meaning Wayzata and what makes us Wayzata, instead of just any municipality. Say, as I read it and have understood it, they're looking to get a little experience under their belt of working with this sort of client, that being us. And I'm curious what their plan is to make it tailored specifically for our city.
Yeah, great question. So a couple things come to mind. I think first, just having a client that is a municipal government is going to be unique for them. They really need to be working directly with our city manager and with direction from the city council, which is certainly unique to their other clients. Another is just how they'll work with Wayzata specifically. A few things that we've mentioned already in our introductory meetings is that we are a small village, and so we need to understand that context in terms of a massive retail store is probably not the vision, right? We haven't done all that work yet, but I'm sensing that that's not really the vision, but we'll need to look at the feasibility. Another thing that we've mentioned to them early on is that we have quite the legacy of running our own muni. They were very interested to learn about that, and they're interested in understanding the specific data from our muni to help them understand the possible demand and the way that it interacts with the community. So they were really interested to see our muni numbers and asked that they could see those pretty early on.
Okay.
And Councilmember McDonald, Madam Mayor, they also asked some great questions about the seasonality of the town. They are used to working in some of those Colorado, more vacation type
Right.
resort destinations. So I think they're a good fit.
Okay, that's great. I was hoping maybe they would say, oh, that sounds very similar to this suburb of Denver or something. Okay, great. Thanks very much.
Wonderful, thank you. Anything, Councilmember? All right. So I wanted to ask a question similar to the question that Councilmember McDonald asked with point 7, their experience, and for the cost, they certainly seem to be providing a great deal of information, a full, robust business plan. Have we seen a copy of a plan that they've created for other clients? And are we comfortable with what they're going to be, the end product that they will be providing?
It's a good question. I haven't seen a business plan or financial model from them, but we talked a lot about how important it is to phase the financial work. There's only so much we can know early on in this first phase, so assumptions need to be made. I do have examples of floor plans and possible facility plans that they've put together for other businesses. So we do, and that it's an over 100 pages worth of information, and it's very polished and very easy to understand. They're also, I was very confident in their way of communicating with us. They kept things simple and concise in a way that I felt was really helpful for these conversations, as opposed to the other proposer was really detailed and talked way too fast. It was hard to even really kind of keep up with the communication.
I would hope that, City Manager, I'd like to hear from you as well, but before we enter into any type of agreement, that we'll have staff take a look at whatever they're proposing in terms of end product to make sure that we're comfortable with what ultimately we're going to be paying for. That they've produced something like this in the past, that they have experience producing these documents in a clear and concise manner, that ultimately, I mean, if this is a document we're going to be receiving and making decisions on that will take considerable amount of time and money, that we're getting a really solid product, right? That this isn't a fly-by-night. And I'm sure you vetted them very well, but if we haven't seen an example of work product that they've created in the past, that makes me a little more reticent to approve this. So, City Manager.
Madam Mayor, I'm glad you brought that up. It's a great point. I would guess that one of the reasons why we haven't seen that is because this is the first time they're dealing in the public realm, and a lot of that stuff is proprietary. However, I think we should be able to get like a template or even like crossed out numbers if it's private data, something that would give us a little bit more assurance that, the form and ultimate deliverable is going to meet our expectations. So we could have that as part of a condition before we sign on the dotted line, or this direction that we're getting right now, would help us before we go for signatures, that we feel that level of comfort.
Yeah, certainly removing any kind of proprietary information or identifying information to a private client, certainly understand we don't need to see that, but making sure that there is acceptable work product that we would feel comfortable with, right? And that we would hold you guys accountable to for the money spent. So, okay. Thank you. I'd like to speak a little bit to the shared info, the group of 47. We have a very, very tight time frame. I think it's a great idea to share information when and if we can. But I don't want that to hold us up either. And I don't want to be the ones that are leading the charge, so to speak. We're new at this too, and I hope nobody's expecting us to forge new ground and be the groundbreakers and look to us to also flip the bill, right? Because of who we are, we're Wayzata. So I would just ask staff to proceed cautiously, share information as appropriate, but if other cities can undertake this endeavor as well. right? We have taken a lot of time and liberties to go down this path thus far. But I'm happy to share information if somebody wants to call. And I know there are a lot of mayors around the state that are looking at this with their councils and staff. But we have a tremendous amount of work to be done between now and June. And so the focus selfishly is to our community, our finances, and our future path, and not the education of the state of Minnesota. To me, I'm going to be looking to our state legislators and the Office of Cannabis Management to provide that information, much like we're trying to figure it out ourselves. So no, that's probably pretty harsh, but you know, we need to really, this is uncharted territory for so many, and somebody has a question, I'm happy to ask, but I am, and I think I could speak for the council, but if you think differently, council, please speak up. I would like to see your focus, Ms. Gellner, to be on Wayzata 99.9% of the time, with a helping hand to our neighbors, of course, as you see fit, but we have a lot of work to be done. So,
Understood. That works
yes.
for me.
Councilmember Plekish.
Madam Mayor, this discussion has actually triggered a couple of other questions that I had.
I'm sorry.
One is, well, yeah, that's the way it works, is having now heard that it sounds like we're trying to be a bit of a pioneer in this. So one of my questions is, are you aware of any other city that's pursuing this kind of a thing to figure out what they're going to do, or are we being the pioneers here?
I am not aware, but we're talking about financial feasibility at our Thursday meeting, so imagine that's when more cities will share where they're at in the process.
Okay?
I think that, I don't know if my goal's never been to necessarily pioneer it, but I'm looking at the schedule for the entire year and knowing that the first thing we need to study is financial feasibility, and your direction was how much revenue is even possibly on the table here, what's the general scale of this? I feel we should try to understand that as soon as possible so you know whether to invest any more time or effort into this.
Okay, and my second question was, if we don't do this, what are the consequences?
Well, I think you could decide to make the crucial decision point as early as you want. June was identified as, once you have more financial info, that might be a really clear way to say, I no longer want to study this. You could decide at any time to stop studying this. The consequence would be that we would need to adopt ordinances before the end of 2024, and we would need to allow for one retail location within our community. We would have a zoning district available somewhere for that to go, and it would be opened by a private operator at some point in time. And that's really all we know right now.
All right, thank you.
That's a really good question, Councilmember Plekish. If a private operator were to come in, understanding that the financial side of this is not the only consideration, right? But also impact on the community and city involvement and personnel. I mean, there are many factors associated with a city-run establishment. If a private operator were to come in, what additional oversights can the city have of that operator that the state wouldn't already be overseeing? Did that question was that?
Yes, it did make sense. And that is a question that all cities are asking right now. And that will be clarified from the Office of Cannabis Management through the rulemaking process when we understand what exactly the procedures are for an applicant seeking a license from OCM and the interaction that they'll have with the city before or after they turn in that license application. So we don't know the answer yet.
We're still waiting to find out a lot of different pieces. Well, thank you. Thank you all for your questions and for staff. You know, I'm going to go ahead and jump in on the discussion portion of this proposal. barring anything that you find out by seeing the work product that we talked about, assuming that that's all good, I think this is a reasonable investment to make, given the scope of what we're asking them to provide. These are critical pieces of information that frankly, anybody, be it a private enterprise or a city, should be employing, right? A solid business plan. I would hope, even if we don't move forward, that anybody who chooses to come to Wayzata, if that's the direction it goes, for this type of business, is doing their due diligence, similar to what we're doing here in town. All that being said, I expect some really detailed information that come June, we as a council, with staff, can say, you know, this does make sense. We do have a history of running a liquor store and a bar and grill. So we are pioneers in that. I don't know many communities that do both. We may be the only ones in the state. Some have liquor stores, to be certain, but to run both, and to run both profitably, which is the other criteria. I don't want to enter into anything that isn't a profitable endeavor and does not bestow upon the city, you know, a business operation that we can be proud of and its citizens and the state can be proud of, right? This is a big responsibility, not one we're sure we want to take at this point. So I think it's a smart investment to make at this juncture, but come June, we have some very difficult decisions to make, or maybe not. It depends what they come forward with. But it'll be an interesting conversation, to say the least. So I am in favor of moving forward with this, understanding that there is a tremendous amount of work between now and whether anything happens, either a decision or ultimately, you know, if we were to move forward, with a lot of conversations with the community, near and far. So I would like to definitely be having conversations with our neighbors if we decide to move forward with this, what it looks like and impacts, you know, if any, to them as well. Other council members' thoughts?
I'll go next, Mayor.
Yes, please.
You stated some really important points. And I think understanding the deliverables is going to be absolutely essential for us to make a solid decision about the direction that the city should do moving forward. So thank you for pointing that out. And then just being conscious of Emily's time and the 47 other municipals. You've got a lot on your plate, and there'll be more coming. So just being conscious about that and really understanding the work that needs to go into it. But at the end of the day, it's really for the Wayzata community. I support this because I really think in order to make a really informed decision regarding should the city sell the cannabis, we need to do some of this preliminary work. Finding somebody in Colorado who's probably a little more seasoned is probably a good decision. So I support working with them. And I think we really need to get our head around exploring what the cost and the risks are associated with this. You know, what is the size of the retail space? What is the employee overhead and all that stuff? And I'm hoping that that's going to be part of the deliverable. And the fact that they're looking at potentially a 5-year P&L is really, really great because we're going to have some front-end cost that we're going to have to cover with the build-out and stuff. So I'm be really curious to see how quickly we're able to pay off that cost. So I completely support it. I think we have to do this work in order for us, again, to make an informed decision.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Iverson. Others? Councilmember McDonald? Any thoughts?
Thank you, Mayor. I also support this proposal. I think we should move forward. And I look forward to having a robust and very thorough plan to review in June. and I hope that will coincide with some answers to the rulemaking process from the state as well for us to consider. And I think that June timeline of us being able to say, this looks good, or let's cut our losses and let the private market have at it. So I also support this proposal.
Great, thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Plekish.
Oh, and saving the best for last here. So
Always.
if this was only a business or financial consideration, I think it makes a lot of sense. What we're looking at as a city is to decide whether it would make sense for us to do this. Would we make money? Would we be good at it? That sort of thing. But I look at it a little bit differently. To me, it's not just a business consideration. It's also social and cultural. I think it's no secret that I disagree with the state in having legalized cannabis. I think that was a very bad policy decision, but it is what it is right now. So I'm conflicted about this. On the one hand, I don't think the government at any level should be in the business of promoting something that I think is something we shouldn't be doing. On the other hand, since we're being forced to do this by the state, is it better for us to be in control than to leave it to somebody in private enterprise? So I am conflicted about that piece of it. But the bottom line is, because I don't believe this is good social and political policy, I will be voting against it.
Thank you, Councilmember Plekish. Oh, I'm dropping things here. One question I forgot to ask previously. With the formation of the Office of Cannabis Management, this was all put together, as Councilmember Plekish mentioned, without input from cities, more or less, or it was passed, right? And so these are the cards we've been dealt. And we're trying to make the best out of the situation that we have to manage through. Is there and it's continuing to evolve, as you mentioned, during this legislative session. It's like, okay, run and go. Well, wait a second, there's a lot more to be worked out, which legislators need to do. We have to, an agency is being built from the ground up. Is there an opportunity for cities, not the League of Minnesota cities, but cities themselves, to provide comment? Is there a mechanism to the Office of Cannabis Management that we can go directly to the source of the people who are going to be making decisions on our behalf? Is there a mechanism for us to submit those comments to them and not going through the third parties like the League of Minnesota Cities or a state legislator or anything else? But we really need an opportunity to share our concern, be if it's us or if it's somebody else running these operations. Director Gellner, what do you know about this?
Yes, so the website for Office of Cannabis Management has a link that you can email anytime and offer comments at any point specific to the rulemaking process. I've also participated in about 5 different surveys about rulemaking that have come out from the office. And in every field, I keep saying municipal cannabis retail stores need more direction on exactly how our process will work. And so it's out there. The OCM staff is aware that municipalities are looking at this and that it needs to be part of rulemaking, so we have clarity. So anyone can submit comments at any time. They are submitting those, and the office told me in a meeting to be confident that they have a very large matrix of every comment that they're trying to funnel through their process.
And these are not, but these are only in response to surveys they're sending out. There isn't a mechanism as we think of, oh, wait, this is an important issue that will need to be addressed, that we can go log an idea, or that, is there, or is there?
There is, yeah.
There is, oh, good.
So their website's not incredibly intricate, so it's pretty easy to find that link once you're on their website of providing public input.
Perfect. And then, further to one of the statements that you made, Councilmember Plekish, and it's a really good one. It isn't just about the finances, right? And whether, we've run an operation or not, but it's also, we need to take the feedback from the community, and as we open this up, if we choose to move forward, there will have to be considerable community engagement. You know, what does the community want? There is yet to be one issue we've ever dealt with where 100% of the people will agree. It's just never happened yet. Maybe this will be the one time. I doubt it. But we will listen, right? And we will take that feedback. You know, I'm sure when we opened up a liquor store, you know, there were decisions or there were opinions for and against. So it'll be interesting to see the evolution of how this happens. It's uncharted territory, to be certain. So,
Mayor, can I make one more comment?
yes, Councilmember Iverson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Member Buckich, I respect your personal view on the cannabis, but I have to go on the record to say, and you brought this point up, that when we entered this discussion as a city for alcohol in a city-ran liquor store, there was probably just as many concerns. What we don't know is the data associated with cannabis yet, but what we do know is the data associated with liquor. Addiction, deaths, impact to families, impact to communities. So I hate to have it be singled just for this one use. If we think that it affects us as a community, as a culture, as a community, then we should look at both. Because both of them, one we know has proven data about the impact to lives every single day. Cannabis will be out there. Perhaps Colorado has some of it. But I don't think that we should single out one particular item if we're going to do this.
Thank you, Councilmember Iverson. There are valid points on both. I believe I asked this question previously. So state law mandates cannabis cannot be sold to anyone under the age of 21, correct? Much like alcohol.
Yep, 21.
Is it, perhaps, City Attorney, I apologize for putting you on the spot, but I suspect you'll know the answer to this pretty quickly. May we be more restrictive? So if we had a cannabis dispensary, could we say, we don't sell to anyone under the age of 25? Could we be more restrictive on the age requirement?
Madam Mayor, I would say in general, no. This is a field that the state has occupied and set the rules for. So I don't think the legislation and general legal principles would allow us to set a higher, you've got to be older in order to purchase it in Wayzata.
I thought the concept was you couldn't make it less restricted, meaning you can't, like alcohol, you can't say, well, we know state law says 21,
Yep.
but at our place, you could be 18.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. I think with this particular law, the way it's written, the legislative intent, the particulars, the way the regulations are probably going to be written, I doubt that would be the case.
Okay.
So you're putting me on the spot. That's my quick
I am,
answer.
I'm sorry. I know,
okay.
I apologize. But I just keep thinking about that, and the reason I bring that up is because we do know there's data, right? So we do know there's data about child or young person brain development, right? And that occurs up until the age of 25. And even when Senator Morrison was here, she had indicated that she was actually looking to increase the age to 25. And as a physician, because of that child brain development. And so that's why I asked the question, that if we would have that latitude, because that would be something that, if we're running the operation and we're in a position where we have to, essentially, I would want us, if we were able to increase the age at least to 25.
Madam Mayor, we can certainly look at that question more. The one thing that comes to mind is, the city does have the discretion to regulate reasonably the time, place, manner that the product is sold. And we can limit locations in the city to one, licenses, I suppose. So we do have certain tools that the legislation allows that would go to some of those concerns that council members are raising that aren't just financial.
Okay. Huh. I guess first things first, and we'll get some good data points to figure all this out. So, all right. Then if there are no further questions, we are here to consider, approval of a professional services agreement with Point 7 Group for a Phase 1 municipal dispensary business plan and financial model. Would anyone care to make that motion?
I'll make that motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember McDonald. Is there a second?
Second?
Motion has been first and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay?
Motion passes. All right, thank you very much. And that concludes new business and takes us on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A few things for this evening's report. One is, as you can see outside, snow fell today. We will be having a snow emergency, so all cars off the city streets at 2 a.m. You can go and park them back once the snow has been cleared. Hopefully this is the last snow emergency of the year. Hasn't been too many, so knock on wood. But plows will be out tonight, so hopefully it's not too big of an inconvenience. And just please, everybody drive safe. The roads are going to be icy as the temperature has fallen. Next item is I want to relay some great news we received today. Our police department, and specifically our search and rescue canine Loki and Sergeant Jason Gurman, were the recipient of an award from the Minnesota Chiefs Association. We just got word it'll be awarded at their conference in April, but it's their Excellence and Innovation Award. Given the unique dynamic we have with Loki as being the canine of Sergeant Gurman and how we partner with Sergeant Gurman on providing the services, search and rescue services for the city, and he also supports other cities in the region. In fact, I know I think in Brooklyn Park recently there was a incident and Loki was used and had some success. So really awesome and well-deserving award, and we'll figure out a way to get Loki to a council meeting to provide our thanks, appreciation, and good boys. So stay tuned for more information on that. A couple other events. We have the Chamber State of the Cities panel that is this Thursday from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Country Club. Our wonderful mayor, as well as the mayors from Long Lake, Minnetonka, and Plymouth, will be there talking about what really is what was an active year 2023, what all cities have to look forward to in 2024, and some of the differences and commonalities they have. It was a fun event last year, and I look forward to the conversation. Thank you, Mayor, for representing us well. I look forward to that. There's probably a few open spots left, so if there's any residents or people watching at home that are interested in attending, just go to the Chamber's website, and I'm pretty sure you can still register. It includes lunch as well. And then the city's having our own State of the City at, we're doing it the Wayzata Way, so 4:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. on Thursday, April 11th here at City Hall. It's free. It's going to be a happy hour with some hors d'oeuvres, cash bar and hors d'oeuvres for the first hour, then a presentation by Mayor Mouton, and then a Q&A afterwards. We sent out direct mail to every address in the city to make it as inclusive as we can. We've already gotten a lot of RSVPs. I think we're at about 90 now. So we're starting to think about like a runoff area where people that maybe can't fit, they can observe or engage in some kind of way. So it's a good problem to have. We'll figure it out. So no pressure, Madam Mayor. We're going to have a great audience.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm
it
so
is.
excited.
Yeah,
'cause
that'll be
This is our
great.
first try at this.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Last thing, just a reminder, we've sent it out on kind of our media valves, but property valuations are out. They came out over the last week or two. Just a reminder, if you have any concerns, questions about your valuation, go to our website and get the proper direction. Has all the information about just the process and who to contact at Hennepin County. They are the city's residential and commercial appraiser. Our local Board of Appeal and Equalization meeting will be held on April 18th, but most questions, issues usually can be resolved prior to that. So we encourage residents, property owners to call the numbers that are on our website to contact Hennepin County and get the ball rolling sooner rather than later so you can work through that process. But regardless, our local Board of Appeal and Equalization meeting will be on the 18th.
Have we had a lot of inquiries from the public since the notices went out?
It's been pretty quiet, Madam Mayor, and we expect it'll be quieter this year than in previous years because the valuations increases are lower. But usually we don't start getting questions until a few weeks afterwards. So we'll see. Next meeting should have an update, and that'll be very telling.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
That's all I have.
Wonderful. Excellent. I do know that we have one item, maybe go and work with Public Works, get a follow-up on our trees on Wayzata Boulevard, kind of get an update on that.
Yeah, great question, and it's timely. At the next meeting, what we're planning on having as a workshop discussion item is our forester, Bennett Myron's going to come in and give an update on how the past year went with our tree ordinance. We had pledged to do that this time last year when the ordinance came into effect. So there's going to be a summary, recommendations about any tweaks going forward, and I'll make sure that we discuss that item too.
Yeah, it sounds like, and I was having a conversation with another council member about just kind of the general aesthetics. We did lose some of our ash trees, but the others have been removed or we need to replace, or just maybe an understanding from the city forester what the plan is for that section on the east side of Wayzata Boulevard,
Yeah, and
east of Wayzata Boulevard.
knowing that specific question, I think I might even be able to get a quick answer on that sooner than 2 weeks from now. But regardless, we'll have our city forester at the next workshop.
Wonderful, good. Well, he always has great information to share with us, so. Looking
As
forward
I've
to that.
said many times, he speaks for the trees.
He does speak for the
Lorax.
trees, literally and figuratively. Yes.
He's great.
Perfect. Wonderful. Council, does anybody have anything to share for the greater good? No? No, nothing? All right. Well, thank you all very much. Appreciate all the hard work getting this meeting together, staying late on a snowy day. But we made it through yet another. So, all right. How about a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. In a second?
Second?
Are there discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. We are adjourned.